Hi everyone, I am here today with a longtime friend of mine, Yolanda, who owns an amazing gym. Her and I have known each other for quite a while, and we are going to do a very natural yet elevated look for Yolanda. She is really into yoga, so we want something that's going to stay on but also flatter her amazing features. Stay tuned. So we are going to actually start with Yolanda's eyes today because we're going to do a little bit more of a kind of a smoky rose tone on her. So I'm going to start off with an eyeshadow base. And what I love about this particular eyeshadow base is that it is silicone base, which means that when it goes on the eyelid, especially if you have texture, it will not sit in any fine lines or wrinkles. What I also love about this particular primer is that it is tinted. So on days where you're in a rush, you can put a little bit of this on and it's going to cover up any discoloration you may have on the eyelid. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of this right on her eyelid. We're going to use a blending brush to apply this, and I'm just going in with the tip of my brush like so. So you're just getting a little bit of product on there. And then we're going to start at the base of her lash line and work our way up. You only need a little bit of this. And if you're more comfortable, you can apply this with your fingers at home. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go straight in with her eyeshadow color. I'm going to use more of a neutral tone. Start at the base of the lash line and pull up. And I'm almost kind of pressing it into her eyes as opposed to overly sweeping it in. That way we don't get a ton of fallout. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my favorite brushes, the 217 brush from MAC. This brush has been literally my best friend for 15 years, as long as I've been in makeup. And I love this brush because it's stiff enough to apply color, but it's also fluffy enough to diffuse color. So we're going to use a clean brush to blend out the eyeshadow color that I just placed on her lid. Just going to go back and forth in her crease. She has a very defined crease, so it makes it very easy for the brush to just sit right there. Next, we're going to do some crease color. We're going to go in with a little bit of this dusty rose color and a little bit of this sienna, just a little tiny bit on the brush. And one thing you want to remember when applying your color is you can always add color, but it's very difficult to take color away. So starting with less and adding more as you go along. And I'm almost creating a little bit of a V shape. And what I'm doing now, I just kind of backed up on my brush a little bit because I was applying a little bit too much pigment. So the further back you hold your brush, the less color payoff you get. The closer up you hold it, the more color payoff you get it. So if you find that as you're applying your eyeshadow that you're getting too much color on your brush, take a look at your placement, making sure you aren't holding your brush too close up to the ferrule, making sure that you are a little bit further back. That way you aren't getting as much pressure. So I want to warm this up even more. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with this deep brown, but I'm literally just going to tap it because it's a very, very pigmented color and I don't want it to get too aggressive. So almost like a little baby V within a big V. And you can see now we have our placement. So what we're going to do now that we have the eyeshadow place, is we're going to go in with liner. And because Yolanda has smaller eyes, but these beautiful bright blue eyes, we want to make sure we help those to stand out. So we're going to use a brown eyeliner instead of a black eyeliner. We're going to do one of my favorite liners, which is Last Frontier. And I love this liner because it's a chocolate brown color. So this color works on all skin tones. So whether it's someone who has deep skin like mine, who doesn't want an overly aggressive liner, or whether it's someone who's a little bit more fair skinned and wants something a little bit richer than a traditional brown. I love this. Also, what I love about this is that it's waterproof, so it's going to stay on all day. It's not going to smudge. Additionally, it glides across the eyelid very, very easily. So if you have sensitive eyes, it's not going to pull and tug at your eyes. So when lining your eyes, you want to make sure, close your eyes for me. You want to make sure that you're pressing the liner right into the lash line. The idea is you do little short strokes. It helps you to create a more even line than you trying to do one long, even line. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a technique that's called tight lining. And what that means is I am going to slightly lift up Yolanda's eyelid and I'm going to apply liner underneath her lash line. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create the illusion of fuller lashes. And look down for me. Perfect. So now she has any sort of gaps that may be in the lash line is now filled now that we have liner underneath the lashes and liner on the top of the lashes. And you'll notice that I did not go all the way in with the liner because I didn't want to close her eye space in. So keep in mind that the more eyeliner you do, the more it has a tendency to close in the eyes. Since we want to keep her eyes open and not closed in, I'm choosing as I'm lining to her eyes to not bring the eyeliner all the way in the inner corner. Now, if you have a larger eye and you want to make your eyes appear smaller, then maybe you go in and you do eyeliner all the way around. But if you have a smaller eye, you want to think about very intentionally placing the liner. So maybe you're keeping it on the outer thirds of the eye so that you still have some definition, but your eyes don't appear too small. So right at the base of the lash line is where we're applying this liner. Now, I want to smudge out this liner a little bit. As I'm looking at the inner corner of her lashes, I'm noticing it's a little, look up and over, it stops a little too abruptly for me, so I'm just going to slightly blend this out a little bit. Opposite side. Next, what we're going to do is the deeper colors that we used on the outer crease of her eyes, we're now going to use them for liner on the bottom. So instead of making an overly aggressive line on the bottom, we're going to do a soft, smoky eye underneath. And look up. I'm using a flat brush to create this look. So we're going to apply some mascara now that we are close to completing the eye look. And when I apply mascara, I like to start from the top and then work my way underneath. That way you really coat the lashes. And look down for me. And sometimes it's easier to go in with a second coat once the first coat has somewhat dried. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going in with another coat. You can see that we have a little bit of eyeshadow fallout here. And what we are going to do is we're going to use eye cream to clean up that area. The reason why I'm using eye cream instead of an eye makeup remover is because we need to use eye cream anyway. So why not soothe the under eye while also removing any excess eyeshadow. I just prefer a sponge, little latex ones. That way you can get a very crisp edge there, like so. So now that we have her eyes complete, we're going to go straight into complexion. Yolanda has more of a normal skin type, so we are going to go in with a primer first, and then we're going to go in more with a lightweight foundation because, again, she loves yoga and she wants something that's going to stay on but also looks very much like her. So that's why we are incorporating a primer, which will help her makeup to stay on, but then with a very nice and lightweight foundation. So we are going to use one of my favorite primers, which is the Dior Air Flash Primer. And the reason why I love this primer is because it color corrects. So any sort of discoloration you may have going on is going to color correct with that. But it also helps your foundation to stay on all day. And it's also silicone free, which I absolutely love because that means it's not going to congest your pores. And I'm going to use a fluffy blending brush to apply this particular primer, just because spraying it directly on the face is a little startling. So I'm just going to get the tips of it wet. And then I'm going to start in the center part of her face. And I am going to blend my way out. And the reason why with your foundation and your primer, you start in the center part of your face is because that's always the area that will have the most discoloration, because that's the area that is exposed to the sun the most. Something else to note about primer is that you don't necessarily need to use primer all over your whole face. So if you only want to use it in the areas where you have discoloration or any areas where by the end of the day your foundation has worn off, then do that. So we are going to use a sponge, a beauty blender, an angle beauty blender to apply her foundation. And today on Yolanda, we are going to use the Nars Sheer Glow foundation. And the reason why we're going to use the Nars Sheer Glow foundation is because it's a nice sheer to medium coverage, and it has vitamin C and turmeric in it. So I always tell people it not only looks good on your skin, it's actually good for your skin. The same thing with the foundation. I'm just going to use a little bit, and we're going to start in the center part of her face, and we're going to work our way out. Now with this foundation, what's nice about it is that you can use your fingers, you can use a brush, or you can use a sponge. Now if you use your fingers, it's going to give you more of a skin-like look, and it's going to give more of a melted, lived-in look. If you use a brush, that's where you're going to get the most coverage. And then when you use a sponge, depending on the medium that you use with the sponge, it can give it more of a skin, dewy effect like we have here with Yolanda. Make sure not to neglect the back part closest to the ears. Make sure not to neglect any jawline. You don't want there to be any lines with your foundation. If you have freckles, you want to stick to more of a sheer to medium coverage foundation as well. The reason being is more than likely if you have freckles on your face, then you have them on your body. So if you're using a full coverage foundation on your face and you cover up all the freckles, then there's a huge disconnect from your face to your body. So it looks a little bit more natural for you to use more of a sheer coverage foundation. So now that we have her complexion perfected, we are going to go in with a little bit of concealer underneath her eyes. And my personal favorite concealer is the Nars Radiant Creamy Concealer. I love this because it looks so beautiful on the skin and it looks super flawless underneath the eyes. So if you have any texture or concerns for underneath your eye area, it's not going to sit in any texture. It's a perfect medium coverage. So she has very little to cover up underneath her eyes. So that's why we are opting for this today. We're going to use one of the little baby blenders for underneath the eyes. The reason why I'm using a little small one underneath the eye as opposed to the large one that we just used is because I want to be very intentional about where I am placing product. I'm a firm believer that you don't need to overly apply makeup where it's not needed. And she has a very flawless under eye area, very little discoloration, if any, so we don't really need to pack the under eye with concealer at all whatsoever. Another little tip as it relates to concealer is Wherever you start with your brush or your sponge, wherever you place the brush first is where there's going to be the most product. So for example, with her, she's a little bit deeper in this area. So that's why I started there with the concealer as opposed to the inner corner of her eyes. Now we are going to set her makeup. Even though she's a little bit more on the normal side of things, she wants her makeup to stay on all day. Locking in this cream, this liquid foundation is going to be very, very important. So I am going to use the Nars translucent powder. The reason why I love this powder, it's called the light reflecting setting powder. I love this powder because it is talc free. Talc is an ingredient that absorbs oil, so it's perfect for someone who's very, very oily. However, if you're more on the dry side, talc is not going to be your friend. This powder is actually silica based, which means it's going to lock your makeup into place. However, it's going to smooth everything out, so it's totally safe for under the eye area. And I prefer to work from the cap. And when you work from the cap, then you don't get too much product. A lot of times when using a loose powder, you waste a lot of product. So instead of going into the powder, if you actually work from the cap, then you waste less and then you don't apply as much on the face. So again, I'm going to back up off of the brush because I don't want to overly apply too much powder. I just want to be very intentional about my placement. So the further back I am, the less product I'm going to get. And then the same thing with setting powder. You don't have to set your whole face. So if you're typically very dry in your chin area, then don't set your chin. Or if you find that by the end of the day, you're always a little bit more, your foundation has worn off in the nose area, then maybe you only set your nose. And then we're gonna go in with a little bit more of a neutral blush for her. And again, wherever you place your brush first, that's where you're going to get the most color payoff. And turn towards the camera the other way. So I'm starting at the full parts of her cheek and I'm pulling the color back. And as you can see, there's barely anything on the brush, just a little bit of product on the brush. And I'm going to use that same brush because it's nice and small and I like it because I can be precise about my color placement. And I'm going to go in with a matte bronzer for her. And we're going to take it around the hairline and we're going to create some very intentional dimension. I'm going to apply bronzer right where the ear slopes down, and I'm going to stop it right where the corner of her eyes are. So when you create shadows, you give the illusion that the face is slimmer. So think about the areas where you want your face to be slimmer, and that's where you would apply your bronzer. Now she has a very slender face, but if you have an issue where you feel like your face is a little bit more on the full side, then maybe you chisel out this area a little bit more with bronzer. And next we are going to fill in her brows, and we are going to use a soft brown pencil, and that's because I want to keep her brows looking as natural as possible. This is one of my favorite brow pencils, and the reason why I love this is because it has a very, very skinny pencil on one side, and then the other side has a brush so that you can brush your brows out. I like a skinnier pencil as opposed to a bigger one because it allows you to be more intentional and more precise with your placement. And also I'm keeping my hand placement is a little bit further back. And the reason for that is because I don't want to apply too much of this pencil on her. So once again, the same thing with the brush. The further back I hold this pencil, the less product it's going to deposit. So you can just see from one side to the other that this is the same shape. Perfect, thank you. This is just a little bit more warmer on this side. She has very, very warm hair, so we want to keep the brows warm as well. Since we are doing a very simplistic look, we're going to stick with a very simplistic lip, and we are going to do a very neutral gloss along with a neutral pencil. So the gloss I'm going to use is going to be more of a neutral tone. This color here personally is one of my favorites. I think it's very flattering across all skin tones. It's called Complexion, and it almost to me looks as though it's your own lip color, but with just a hair more rose. So it gives the lips a very healthy look. So what I'm going to do is a little bit unconventional, and I'm going to put the gloss on Yolanda first, and then I'm going to use a chubby pencil to line her lips second. The reason why I'm doing it in the reverse order is because I don't want her to have a harsh lip line. I want it to be more of a lived-in natural look. So the way we're going to get the definition and also the color is to do the gloss first and then the liner separate. This doesn't even look like much color on her at all. It's very, very, very natural. And then we're going to go in with the liner. Very, very intentional but unintentional. And we are all finished with this beautiful look. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. And don't forget, if you're looking for more individualized consultation, feel free to shoot me an email. I love to hear from you. Goodbye for now.